Hello, and welcome back to Let's Design Shards, a Minecraft MOBA adventure map. Having completed the mountain pass and its tower, and programming the pathing of the mountain forces, I moved my focus down to the forest below. Across the valley's wide ravine, we began our next project, a fortress to span the gap and grant passage to the other side. After winding through their forest pathway, players will fight for control of this fortress. Those who manage to hold both sides will gain a foothold in enemy territory. To start, I needed to locate the most central point of the ravine, where equal distance could be found between the two sides based on a central point. Locating the map's center, I moved down the ravine until I located this point. After clearing my markers, I ran colored wool to indicate the center of each fortress's segment. Using these marks as a reference point, I began to outline the fortress in wool, sizing up the inner walls and location of the guard towers. Having copied this to both sides, I cleared away excess forest and outlined the outer wall, curving it between the side towers. Marking the entrance, I worked to ensure the walls were wide enough that players and NPCs could walk across them, then copied this section to the other side. Clearing away grass and dirt, I laid down the cobblestone and brick foundation for the fortress and towers on both sides. From here, I began work on the towers themselves. I wanted this fortress to have its own design, separate from the main base locations. To that end, I created a square structure, and instead of a staircase wrapping around the center, I contained the stairways to a single corner. Using a pattern of stairs and stone brick, I created thin openings to function as arrow slits, providing a fair amount of cover while allowing a decent view of the area. Seeing the design was rather stone brick heavy, I decided upon dark wood as the flooring for this stronghold. After this replacement, I added some internal structure to the tower, then prepared the third floor. Laying down this layer's flooring, I started to design the open-air turret cap. With the layout determined, I then crenellated the tower in a similar manner to the main bases. It took me several attempts to find a design I was happy with, but I quickly decided on what you see here, lighting it up with torches. While I was pleased with the tower cap, I needed to insert a new level to get the look and feel I was after. Temporarily moving it, I constructed a new third floor and added the same style arrow slits. Moving around the outer layer, I honed the aesthetic design with slabs and stairs before building up the stairway leading to the cap. This complete, I took the lid and placed it back atop the tower, connecting to the framework below. I had to do some internal work to get the stairs lining up properly, but once I finished, I sealed off the tower. Working on the exterior, I added some aesthetic design in the form of cobblestone fence, then mirrored the tower to this side of the ravine. Completing the outer wall segment, I mirrored the towers again to the far side of the ravine, followed closely by the outer walls as well. Approaching from the base front, we see the entrance where a gateway is to stand. Here, I placed an entrance similar to other locations on the map. At the back of the fortress, I then began the internal walls. Ensuring the walls were wide enough and that their center point was clearly marked, I raised the wall and dug out a walkway along the top in line with the tower's second level. From this layer, I again identified the center and began constructing what is to become a bridge across the ravine. The walls on either side will be a mirror of what is built here, so I began the arching bridge and brought it close to the center point, where it will meet with its mirror once this side is complete. Framing the walkway with stone brick walls, I selected and stacked these walls upward to the third level of the towers. Taking stone and dark wood, I constructed the upper walkway, which looks down to the bridge. Crenellating the wall, I created a defensive point from which players and NPCs can fire down onto the bridge and guard their side of the ravine. With stairs and stone brick, I added my arrow slit design to the inner wall and improved the design by expanding the segment outward. Looking down from above, we can see the newly constructed inner wall. Making a copy, I mirrored my selection and then pasted the walls to the other side. This done, I moved to the center point and completed the bridgeway arch. Working out the final design pieces, I added lighting along the bridge in several places, then fixed up the entryway on each side. From here, I tested things out with bow and arrow, firing back and forth from both sides to get a feel for how combat may transpire. With the main structure complete, I began some internal construction. Taking red wool, I framed the inner section, then switched the wool to stone brick when I was happy with this framework. After adding the same style of arrow slit windows, I at first laid down a wooden flooring and then quickly changed my mind and put down stone slabs instead, which I felt was more appropriate. I spent some time on the inner structure's walls, and after modifying the design several times, I built up the inner section somewhat before opening an entrance into one of the towers. This done, I slanted the structure's top with stairs, and followed up by placing a roof segment in line with the inner wall's center tier. I then added arrow slits to the side of the inner wall so those within may have a vantage point on the courtyard below. Near the structure's entrance, I raised a platform and placed in a table, several stools and barrels, giving the impression of a small guard station. After adding some weapon racks to the corner, I moved to the other side to create a basic barracks. While I first attempted to double stack the beds, I found the roof was a little too low, so I settled on a single tier of bedding. As I wanted the roof of this structure to be traversable, I refined and crenellated the segment. After starting the walkway itself, I changed my mind regarding height and lowered the pathway. Once the stone brick ceiling was in place, I added in a layer of dark wood slabs before forming the staircase either side and stripping away the unneeded stone. To each corner, I created a minor raised platform on which defenders may watch over the base. While each team will begin by holding their side of this fortress, once one side pushes across the ravine, the attackers will become defenders as they hold the structure against enemies in the forest. Moving to the ravine side, I began a pathway leading from one tower to the next. Stripping away the stairs from the first tower, I created this pathway to ensure NPC forces navigate through the whole base instead of moving directly to the bridge. After hollowing out the inner space, I expanded to each side and in some places outwards to ensure a fair amount of travel space. With the path laid out, I placed wood slab flooring and reconstructed and raised the covering walls. Sealing the area, I moved to the protrusions either side and added some design features to keep things interesting. Traveling back inside, I started to add in my arrow slit design across the lower wall. Since the opposing side will have a mirror of this wall, players will have the chance to catch glimpses of their enemies on the other side and even fire ranged weaponry across the ravine. This will keep things interesting as well-timed shots here can certainly impact the battle above. Once more outside the fortress, I added in supporting stonework below the base and down into the ravine. This is to give the impression that our fortress is built deep into the rock and is well supported by the foundations below. Crossing to the other side, we get a look at the before and then the after of the fortress courtyard as I mirrored the opposing design. Back to the ravine, we get a similar view as I copied this outer wall section over, bracing the fortress once more on the stone below. While the fortress still had a few points that needed touching up, the structure itself was nearly complete. The walls along the ravine, for example, were somewhat small in width, and yet still needed to connect to their towers. Widening out the wall, I added entrances into the towers themselves. This done, players and NPCs are now able to fully traverse each side of the Valley Fortress. With the fortress all but complete, one final item remained, to diverge this segment more from the primary bases. I selected the entire fortress and using randomization, I replaced much of the stone brick with cracked and mossy segments. This change gives the fortress an old and weathered feel, and makes it seem much more like its own unique design. This final change in place, it was time to create the forest pathways and program the NPCs who would traverse them. Throughout the forest, I created a winding cobblestone path toward each side's corresponding base. It took a fair amount of time to ensure the paths were lined up to be near mirrors, yet retain a unique feel, but I eventually was pleased with my results and moved on to the NPCs themselves. Coming up from the barracks, our path takes NPCs out and over their spawn point towards the main gateway ahead. Leaving their base, they head into the dense forest on their way to the ravine-spanning fortress. While these forests are clear and empty now, I'll be adding wildlife and even fey creatures in later episodes to increase the risks and the rewards of the forest lane. Taking and holding the fortress will be a decisive blow to the enemy force, giving a foothold from which to strike the opposing base. While the pathing isn't yet perfected, the basics are in place and our opposing sides are now able to fight over this lane. Having completed 2 of our lanes, 1 yet remains, the twisting maze of underground mines bordered by the dwarves who will reside under the mountain. This and more, however, will have to wait for later. If you've enjoyed this and you want to see more, leave a like, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.